Chapter 3.1 Old Wounds. Easy now, girl. Tobias's voice crackled through the driftwood's intercom. Yes, Retta had a few flyby lessons with her dad, but no, she never docked a skiff inside another ship in the middle of space before. With every micro-movement of the yoke, her thrusters fired, overcorrecting as her new driftwood slowly careened towards the junk dog. She was a train wreck in slow motion. I am going easy, she said, not going easy as her frustration mounted. Doesn't this thing have autopilot? You can't rely on that. You gotta learn the basics first, Tobias said. It's like parallel parking. I never had to parallel... She overcorrected again, spinning the driftwood away, unable to control it, or her temper. Park! I never had to parallel park because I rode a bike. A bike? You're trying to convince me you ain't a kid and you're riding bikes? I meant... Retta was interrupted as the driftwood spun clockwise. It turned opposite the junk dog, and she waited as it slowly drifted 360 degrees. A motorcycle! I rode a motorcycle! All right. You ever weave through traffic? Who am I kidding? Of course you have. Think of it like weaving through a tight gap. Retta braced her hands on the yoke, took a deep breath with her focus concentrated on the junk dog's open hangar, and slowly pushed her grip forward with machine-like precision. There you go. Just like a bike. Keep the momentum going, nice and slow. She was doing it. Her skiff was gliding directly to the blue-lit landing rails. All right. Pull your mag rail lever. Directly beneath the yoke. Retta kept her focus on the junk dog. Her muscles were tight and stiff as she released one death grip from the yoke and felt underneath. She pulled the lever, and an electronic whir buzzed beneath her skiff. Good. Keep it up, and maybe you won't crash this skiff. Retta smirked at that. She would have talked back, but she needed utter, complete focus as her skiff glided into the hangar. She watched left and right, saw the mere inches of clearance she had on each side, and scrunched her nose. Her wings barely missed the hangar walls, and Retta released a sigh of relief. A sudden, magnetic snap latched at her ship, pulled her onto the mag rail, and lurched her and her curly hair forward. Red parted her hair, looked ahead, and with a smile, saw the driftwood docked inside the junk dog. Retta gleamed as the heavy metal space hangar doors slid shut behind her. She was enclosed in darkness as the doors sealed her securely from the vacuum of space and into safety. The inner hangar doors slid open, light poured in, and Tobias waited on the other side with a smile. His arms were crossed. Alpha sat by his side, and her tail wagged as she smiled with her tongue hanging out the side. The mag rails pulled the driftwood to the end and settled the ship down to the ground. Retta popped open the cockpit and stood triumphantly, stretching her arms over her head. I did it! See? No autopilot needed. Good job, kid. Tobias stepped down a few grated metal steps towards her ship. Look at this beaut, too. He admired the ship and teased Red. This is a great replacement for the one you crashed. Ha! Very funny, Tobias. She stepped out of the cockpit and onto the wing. Red jumped off and met him at the ground level of the hangar. You do still owe me a ship. He paused as he caught a better look at Red. He didn't notice before, but in the light of the hangar, Tobias saw the still raw, bleeding red marks where Jimbo strangled Retta. Geez, kid, he hurt you that bad? Oh. She covered it with her scarf, hiding Jimbo's red handprints on her neck. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Nah, stay here. Give me a sec, Tobias said, stomping through the hangar and into the ship. Retta took a seat on a cargo box beside her, looked back at her ship, and thought about what happened on Zoto's planet. If it wasn't for Zoto, she wouldn't have this ship. She would have drowned, and she wouldn't have learned about the Baton. Retta looked at her wrist, at the tattoo where the Baton and her became one. Why is this so important? She thought. And why am I the one that got it? She looked up and noticed Alpha beside her. She sat at attention and looked Retta in the eye with her two wide black eyes. What's up, girl? Alpha shuffled her paws, whimpered, and sniffed at Retta. Alpha inched her snout towards Retta's neck, sniffed at the wound, and gently licked it. It stung, but Retta knew Alpha's intentions were pure. "It's okay, girl." She patted Alpha's soft fur and scratched behind Alpha's lowered, submissive ears. "I'm okay." Tobias re-entered with the milk crate clattering with glass bottles. He placed it on the ground, dropped to one knee, and grabbed a blue bottle with a sloshing, viscous liquid. "They're all going to sting a bit, but this one stings the least. Trust me, I know." He pulled a rag from his pocket, one only marginally stained with grease compared to the rest. Tobias pressed the bottle's open mouth to the rag, turned it upside down, and dabbed the rag in alcohol. "You don't have rubbing alcohol?" "This is rubbing alcohol," Tobias said and placed the bottle back on the ground. "That's the alcohol, and this is the rub." The greasy rag was sopping wet. "Now stay still." Retta craned her neck up and pulled her scarf down to expose her wound. With a surprisingly gentle hand, Tobias dabbed her wound with alcohol. Gentle hand or not, it hurt like hell. It stung like 1,000 needles, burned like a spray of napalm, and lit her nervous system aflame. She writhed, bit her lip, and curled her fingers into a fist. "Hold on, just a sec," Tobias said, pressing the rag deeper in. "I don't trust that dirty tree-dweller Jimbo's hands. Didn't see a sink or soap in his hut, and I don't need infection on this ship either." As if Tobias was one to speak. They'd been using dish soap for their hands, bodies, and faces for weeks. Red winced, and Tobias held her still. Careful, Red. Don't want to reopen it more." He dabbed her neck again, with a delicate touch, which surprised Retta, for as rough around the edges as he was, he had a soft hand when needed. "So," he said, starting small talk as he cleaned, "what's the deal with the glowing tattoo?" "It's the baton." "The stick?" "Yeah." He looked at the tattoo. "Don't look like a stick tattoo to me." "No, that is the baton. Like it became a part of me." He stopped cleaning her wound and looked at her like she was crazy. "A part of you?" "I know it sounds crazy." "Damn right. But it does other weird things too. Like, I felt like I could read Jimbo's mind." "Read Jimbo's mind? So it's a magic tattoo now?" "Yeah." "Kid, what'd they have you smoke down there?" "I'm serious. It glows, and I can hear what people are thinking." "All right, then. What am I thinking?" Tobias kneeled in front of her, pulled the rag away, and drooped it over his bent knee. She tried to think, focus, do something to make the tattoo glow and read his mind. But nothing came. I don't know how to work it yet." "Yeah, right. Well, maybe you should figure that out first," Tobias said, and kept dabbing her neck despite Retta's flinching. "What else they say about that stick?" "It's supposed to point me towards my mom, but bad people are after it." "Like Jimbo?" "Yeah, like Jimbo." Silence lingered between them. Retta remembered what Jimbo said about Tobias and how he wasn't someone she could trust. She knew she shouldn't say anything, but felt compelled to ask. "You know, Jimbo said you had a past." "Did he?" Tobias hardly acknowledged it as he finished cleaning Retta's wound. "He said you were dangerous." Tobias didn't answer. What did he mean? "Look," Tobias put the bloodied rag down beside him. "I've done some bad things, but the past, and I'm making up for it now." He took out a bandage, pulled the adhesive strip off it, and touched it with his finger, realizing it was dry. Tobias went to lick it, but realizing how unsanitary it was, stopped, grabbed a bottle of alcohol, and took a swig, swishing it in his mouth. Then he licked the adhesive and pressed the bandage against Retta's neck. "I don't talk about your mom. We don't talk about my past. Deal?" Retta didn't want to accept the deal. She hesitated, and that hesitation was enough of an agreement for Tobias. "Can I ask one more thing?" "Depends on what." "Why were you on Earth?" He scoffed. "You're nosy just like Celeste, ain't you?" He flung the rag over his shoulder and gathered the bottles of alcohol. "Delivering a package for an old friend." He got up and went back to the junk dog's cockpit. "Get some sleep. It's been a long night." He left the rest up to Retta's imagination. That night, Retta fell asleep immediately, and she would have slept forever if she didn't have to pee. She awoke in a tired stupor, creased one eye open, and threw off the mismatched sheets Tobias gave her. Her shoulders were scrunched, her scarf dangled off the bed, and she tested the floor's temperature with a single toe. The cold metal floor felt like frostbite at night, and she recoiled back from its icy touch. Retta flipped a dirty sock inside out, slipped it on like hazmat gear, and stepped over landmines of Alpha's fur and toys. She stepped over the hazards, into the hall, and shuffled towards the bathroom. A sudden, bright light shined down the hall and nearly blinded her unprepared eyes. Retta was annoyed, but also curious. She squinted to see. Tobias was seated with his back to Red, in front of his monitor, with its bright light shining in his face. "Can you hear me?" Tobias said, talking at the monitor. Retta paused in the hallway, her curiosity getting the better of her bladder, and she waited to see where this went. "Yes," Claire said from the other side. "Did you get the info from Jimbo?" She was a bright blur at first, but Retta's tired eyes slowly adjusted and she saw Claire on the screen. Retta was curious, and her pee could wait. She stepped back into her room, grabbed her notebook from her jacket, and perched herself against the door frame. She clicked her pen and wrote Tobias and Claire's conversation. "It says uploaded. It's uploaded, right?" Tobias asked, consistently annoyed dealing with links and tech. "Hold on. Yes, I received it." There was silence as Claire sifted through the data. Tobias let out a sigh, leaned his elbow on the table, and perched his chin on his palm. He grabbed a glass with his other hand and took a swig of his drink. "Very nice, Tobias." "Don't spoil me, Claire. I ain't used to compliments from you." "Jimbo kept very detailed notes on the Vicious Six," she said. "Nikolai's, Stray Dog, Starshot, Leaky Eye." Wait, Retta thought. I know those names. The Vicious Six sounded familiar. It tickled the back of her mind like a memory just out of reach, like a word on the tip of her tongue. Retta flipped through her notebook, back to the beginning, where she kept her mom's printed articles. "Hold on," Claire said to Tobias. "It looks like Nika is near you now. Her golden ship was last seen by Dragon's Spine." "Good old Nikolai's," Tobias responded. "Can't miss her gaudy taste." Retta found it. The article she remembered titled, "The Scourge of the Colonies, the Vicious Six, Captured at Callisto." It was her mom's article, written almost 10 years ago. But there'd been nothing since. Red tilted her notebook to see better, trying to catch the light of Tobias's monitor. In her tired stupor, the clipped article slipped out from Red's notebook, fluttered in the air, and fell to the ground. "What was that?" Claire asked. Her eyes were as sharp as a hawk, and Retta froze. "That movement. Who's back there?" Red tensed in Claire's spotlight. Tobias turned around, saw Retta, and tried to cover up for her. "Oh, ignore her, Claire. She's just a ship hand that—" "You," Claire demanded. "Come here." Retta had nowhere to run. She closed her book, stepped over the photo, and scooted it behind her, hoping neither Tobias nor Claire would see it. Red awkwardly shuffled to Claire, still in a white t-shirt, shorts, and her lopsided scarf. Claire did not welcome new faces. "What's your name?" "Red," she said, leaving out Starlight. "Yep," Tobias said, tagging along. "Just Lil Red here." "And your last name?" Leave it to a STARS officer to keep prying, Red thought. "She don't got one," Tobias said. "At least that I know. Girl just stowed away on this ship. Just found her last night." Retta didn't know how to read Claire's neutral response. Meanwhile, Tobias looked at Alpha seated beside him and suddenly nodded his head, pointing to the wire behind the monitor. Claire leaned closer to the feed, squinted her eyes, and focused on Retta. "You look familiar." "Alpha! Hey!" Tobias yelled. "Get away from there!" Tobias stood up, shoved Retta back, and went back behind the monitor. "Sorry, Claire. Alpha's—" "Hey! Get off that wire!" He struggled with Alpha behind the video feed and yelled, "I'll check out Dragon Spine, Claire." Alpha, no!" She ripped the wire out from the monitor, shut down the video feed, and disconnected Claire from the call. The screen went dark, the room went black, and Tobias clapped twice. The common room lights blinked back on, and Retta covered her eyes from the light. It blinded Retta for a moment, and when she saw again, Tobias was kneeling on one knee, scratching under Alpha's chin. Good job, Alpha. He turned to Red, gave her a cutting look, and stood tall above her. What was that, Lil Red? I just overheard your call and was curious. I swear, girl, your curiosity's going to get you killed, he said and crossed his arms. At least you didn't use your name. Who was that? Retta asked. She knew Claire, but needed to play innocent and keep Tobias's attention away from her mother's article that was still laid on the floor. Parole officer, Tobias said, pulled his sleeve up, and revealed a glowing, blinking bracelet on his wrist. Her name's Claire. Does she know you still steal ships? Tobias smiled. We scratch each other's backs. He looked back at the black monitor, but Claire's going to be pissed I hung up. He turned back to Red and with a hawk's eye saw the article on the ground behind her. Now what's that? He said, and brushed Red aside. Scrap that fell out of my journal. She tried bluffing, but it didn't work. He picked up the article, looked at it, and turned back to Retta with a sneer. Scrap, huh? He wagged the paper at her. Just curious to eavesdrop, huh? What'd you hear then? He folded the paper and tucked it in his pocket. Anything good? Red wasn't getting her article back. Tobias was not happy. Tell me, and don't play dumb. What'd you hear? That you're hunting the Vicious Six. What else? That's it. He crossed over his arms. Is that your parole? To hunt the Vicious Six? Tobias took a deep breath, let out a sigh, and turned away from Red. Yeah, it is. He was angry, absolutely teeming with anger, but he bottled it up. Tobias knew how to temper steaming rage and keep his cool. This stays between us. He may have been angry and seething, but you stayed calm and firm. All right? All right. I focus on the six and keep my parole. You focus on that baton, and then we find your mom. Deal? Deal. And no more snooping, he said and turned his back to her. Get some sleep. We're finding Nika in the morning.